for me is, oh, sorry, yeah, I forgot.
Sorry.
That's okay. Oops, we just, I found it easy to do goal setting in umpiring because I had been doing it in my job for so long, but also I find it really helpful, um, especially when you start getting to the point where, you've been to a provincial tournament, you've been to an Eastern Canadian or a Canadian championship, you're going to get feedback at every tournament. And so when you start the next season, you should be looking at that feedback that you got and, okay, so they want me to work on my positioning. So what do you want to improve in your positioning by the end of the season? So I was really quite deliberate in looking at the feedback that I got and how am I going to get better at those things over the next course of the season. I think a lot of times we get those evaluations and they get filed away and we never look at them again. And that is, I was nerdy and not like that. I kept my evaluations kind of close by and I always went back and did them. And I based my goals off of the advice and feedback that I was getting at those tournaments so that I could get better for the next time. So that goal setting was really helpful for me every single season. And then there does come a point where, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but when you actually do start to see like, oh, there might be a long-term goal. So I would say when I went to my first Canadian championship in 2007, I went to what would now be called the U21 Women's. And that was my first Canadian championship. And really, I went into that championship and I wanted to get a positive evaluation. I did not put, I want to get my level 4. I didn't say that. I said I wanted to get a positive evaluation. I did end up getting my level 4 out of that. But I really enjoyed every game. It was an amazing experience. And then used all that feedback to get ready for the next time I went to a Canadian championship, which was in 2009. I went to my first women's Canadian. And then my third Canadian was the 2011 women's Canadian, where I got my level 5. And I think it was my first one where I started to think, well, maybe I could get my level 5. So that was the long-term goal, but I knew I had a lot of little things I needed to do along the way. And so you map it out for yourself. Like, what are the milestones I need to achieve in order to get there? Here are some things that really helped me a lot in achieving my goals. You need to tell people, like, people need to know what your goals are if they're going to try and help you get there. You have to have mentors. You need to have people that can help you grow and that have your best interest at heart, and they can give you feedback that's helpful, valuable. They also know the Softball Canada program. Like, you need to make sure your mentors know the mechanics and the positioning. I would also say, don't be in a rush. We have a lot of young people that are really in a rush to progress, and I would say don't be in a rush. Let the process unfold the way that it may. But when you get an opportunity, seize it and really relish in it and take advantage of it and enjoy the process. Like, we have a very long certification process. Enjoy it. It's one of those, it's not usually going to be quicker than 8, 9, 10 years. So you might as well enjoy it. I have seen so many people who have gone to a championship and they're so focused on the outcome. Well, what can I get out of this championship, that they actually don't enjoy the games that they're doing while they're there. So I would say, don't focus on the outcome, focus on the process. If you focus on the process, the outcome will take care of itself. So, celebrate your successes. Obviously, when you earn your level 2, you earn your level 3, you go to a really big tournament that you've never been to before, and the UIC says to you after, that was amazing, you did wonderful. I mean, celebrate those things, but also savor your failures. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to have things that happen that are less than stellar, and the biggest value that you can take out of those experiences is by not making those mistakes again. So I started a journal when I went to my first Canadian championship in 2007. And I met the national director of umpires at the time, Brian Van Oss. He came up to me after the women's and they called it the women's and the junior women's at the time. They were at the same venue, and he was the UIC at the women's Canadian, and he watched one of my games, and he came up to me after the game and he said, Frankie, any of those that know Brian, you know the way he used to talk. Calm, cool, collected. That's what a level 5 is all the time, no matter what happens. And then he gave me some examples of things that I was doing on the diamond, the way I was taking off my mask, the way I was coming out from behind the catcher. And I knew exactly what he was trying to say, that I needed to control my movements to give the impression that I was calm, cool, collected all the time. But I appreciated his feedback, and I wrote it down. That was the first thing I wrote in my journal. And then I think it's also helpful to mentor other officials. When you start teaching others, I think there's real value in what that does for your own game. So I waited a long time before I started doing that, but when I did, I just found it incredibly valuable for me. You have to be sharp, you have to be on top of the current mechanics and positioning. And then when people start asking you questions, you got to make sure you're telling them the right answer. So it keeps you sharp. So I found that really helpful. I would say that these are the 5 traits that have probably been the most helpful for me. Gratitude is the very first one. I don't have the occasion to tell this story very often, but not a lot of people know that I come from very modest roots. And so part of the reason I didn't start playing softball until I was 13 is my parents really couldn't afford for us to do many extracurricular activities. So I actually got my first job to get enough money to pay the registration fee. And then I asked for a glove for my birthday, which my grandma got me. And that's why I started playing when I was 13. And the same goes for basketball. I made the high school basketball team when I was in grade 10, and they gave me a letter to take home. And I was reading it on my way home, and it said, you had to pay a $110 fee to play. And I never showed the letter to my mom and dad. So I just went back to school the next day and said, like, thanks, but I'm not going to be able to play. And the coach was like, why? And I said, well, because my parents can't afford for me to play. And so he came to me later that day and he said, Frankie, we really want you to play. So I think those kinds of things make me incredibly grateful for all of the opportunities that I've ever had, because they didn't come easy. And I gave this little presentation just about these 5 traits to, there was a U17 girls soccer team that should have been the best team in Alberta, where I came from a couple of years ago, and they just were crappy. And the coach asked me to talk about the traits and I gave them this, I talked about this, and I said, like, I wonder how many of you are actually grateful to have the opportunity to be here with your friends, practicing and playing. I think about that. Like, I think a lot of kids these days just expect to be able to play because their parents can afford for them to do so. And that was not my experience. So with that gratitude that people gave me the opportunity to play, you can bet your bottom dollar I was not going to let them down. So I had an unparalleled work ethic. I was not going to let these people who had given me the opportunity to play and forego the $110. I was going to work my butt off, and I really did. And that work ethic, when you're willing to work hard at something, it shows in everything that you do, and you have a persistence and a determination about you, a tenacity. And then I think there's also, if you're going to be really good at something, you have to be able to reflect and be introspective on your own performance. There comes a point in anything, profession, personal, avocation, whatever you're talking about, there comes a point where somebody shouldn't have to come into the room and tell you how you did in your performance. You should be able to say, I missed a pitch at the top of the 3rd inning, 3rd batter, 3rd pitch. Or I wasn't in the best position to make that call when I was at first base in the 4th inning. Like, you should have a level of understanding of the mechanics, the positioning in the game, to know when you have maybe not been 100% accurate. I think this is another thing that's been really helpful to me. I also really, really successful elite people that others enjoy being around have a sense of humility about them that is endearing. I would say most of the people that I know in other parts of my life do not know that I have been to the Olympics. It's not something I talk about. If other people want to talk about it, that's fine, but I don't generally. I'm just not, it's not my thing. I don't, it just is not something that I would do. And I think there's, what's that? Somebody once said this line about, you know, you shouldn't have to go around tooting your own horn, right? It's not really attractive. But the other thing that's been, I think the other trait that's been super, super important to me and so valuable is this innate sense of teamwork. From the very beginning, from the very first time that I worked my very first game, it has always been important to me that my partner or partners, however many people that I was working with, I really wanted them to want to work with me again. And it wasn't about necessarily being friends, even though that's a great byproduct. It was about, I wanted them to think that I was actually good at it, that I was a good umpire. And the same goes for the players and coaches. A lot of us work the same leagues, same diamonds all the time. And I wonder how many of us think about when we're walking up to the diamond to do our league game on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights. How many of us think, wow, I wonder what the players are thinking when they see me coming up to the diamond? Do we care? Should we care? That's always been just a little something that I've always thought about is I want them to be happy that I'm there. And again, it's not because I want to be buddy with them. I want them to be happy I'm there because they know I'm going to do a good job, that they know I'm going to deliver, that they know I'm going to be consistent, that they know that I'm approachable and they can come and talk to me. Those are the kinds of things that I always valued. And I guess now that I've had the chance to do these amazing experiences, travel all over the world, and now that I get to come back to Ontario and hopefully help the next round of people live out their Olympic dream, I cannot stress enough the importance of relationships. You never know who's watching your games. You never know when you might work with that umpire from Dominican Republic again. I never know the young lady that I worked with from Port Elgin. I don't know how or when our paths might cross again, but I want those experiences to be as positive as possible so that the next time that we have the occasion to be together, it starts off in a positive and really upbeat kind of way. So these are the 5, I would say, traits that have been like cornerstones to my success in all areas of my life, but especially in these avocations of officiating. So the Olympic journey really, for me, started in when I really started to, it finally sunk in that, oh my God, this is a possibility, was in 2016. So in 2016, the header picture that went out to advertise this webinar was me coming out from behind the plate at the 2016 Women's World Championships that were in Surrey. The picture on the left is me on the plate, and this is the last day of the round robin. This was the very first international competition that I ever participated in. I was selected to go to the Junior Women's Worlds in 2015, but I had to give up that assignment because I found out I was going to be a mom. So I became a mom in July of 2015, at the exact same time that I was supposed to be umpiring at the Junior Women's Worlds. And Jeff Whipple called me and asked me if I was going to apply for the Women's Worlds. And I said, well, I didn't think I was eligible. And he said, well, you did the USA softball cup in 2013. So that's an adult event. So you are eligible and you need to put your name in. And I said, oh, okay. So I put my name in, only to find out that the 2016 Women's World Championship was stage one of the Olympic tryouts, that all officials at all events that year were being scoped out for. So I thought it was really cool. Not a lot of people know this, but the officials were put through a 4-year tryout process, just like the players, which I think is really, really cool. So the picture on the left is the last day of round robin of the 2016 Women's World Championships. This is China versus Cuba. And these teams don't like each other. They have some history. But as it turns out, neither of these teams wanted to win the game, because the winner of this game was going to end up in the same pool for playoffs as the United States, and neither of them wanted that to happen. So in the second inning, China comes to me with the Chinese head coach comes with the interpreter to say to me that they think Cuba is intentionally trying to lose the game. Well, I can assure you, I'd never had that happen to me in my entire life. So I went to the off-field umpire. Sometimes in international competition, we have an off-field umpire that handles all of the lineup changes. The home plate umpire gives them all the lineup changes and they make sure that everybody's got them. I went to the off-field umpire and said, you need to get the umpire-in-chief of this championship like pronto. So Mr. Bob Stanton made his way down to the backstop, and I said, Bob, China is accusing Cuba of intentionally trying to lose this game. And so Bob toodles off and talks to the Cuba dugout, and we proceed to finish the second inning. And then I have a 5 or 6 person delegation from Cuba coming up on the diamond over to home plate. And the interpreter is telling me that they're now accusing China of intentionally trying to lose the game. So Bob, of course, has not left. So Bob, I just give him the little, so he comes to the backstop and I let him know what's happening. And he goes over to talk to the China head coach. And half an inning later, we have some of the Chinese team and some of the Cuban team all hovering around home plate, and they're all talking to each other in their own languages. Obviously, they can't understand each other because they're talking 2 different languages completely. And then there's little old me in the middle. And I back up and I make sure that I have everybody in my field of vision. And I said, the umpire-in-chief for this tournament has told both teams that they are to play, and if they don't, there will be consequences. And I walked right back up to home plate, play ball. And my heart was beating about like 1,000 beats per minute, because I'm like, I'm not even looking around. I need to get this game back on track, and I need to get all these people off the diamond. Everybody left, and we started playing, and there wasn't any more trouble. And after the game, we had a big debrief or whatever, and I mean, it was an awesome game. We got through it. The teams played. There was no more ruckus. But I found out later that very scenario ended up in the next 2 or 3 WBSC certification clinics for the "what would you do if this happened" scenario. So all I would say to you is, you never know what's going to happen, but you have to take those experiences and just do the best you can with it, and use the tools that you have. But it was in that championship that I realized that there is a reason that our certification process takes as long as it does. Because if you're on the diamond and you're worried about where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to go, where am I rotating next, what's the signal for this, what's the signal for that, like those things have to be absolutely intuitive, so that when you have these wonky things that happen, you're not worrying about the little things. Those are taking care of themselves because they're intuitive and they're natural, and you can just focus on the big situation that is at hand and do your best to get through it, because everything that we do is about game management and presence on the diamond. And I think that we underestimate every single thing that we do either enhances our presence or it diminishes our presence. So that tournament was just such an amazing, what an amazing experience. The WBSC was trying to blow the lid off of the perception that softball is only relative to a few countries. So they opened the registration up in 2016 to whoever wanted to go. 29 countries participated in that World Championship. We had 31 umpires from all over the world. And like I said, the 7 Canadian umpires that participated in that championship all knew that that was step one of the possibility of going to Tokyo in 2020. Luckily, I made it through and I went to the 2017 Japan Cup. That's the picture on the right. That was an amazing experience. My first time out of the North American continent to umpire, and what an amazing experience it was. And then after 2017, I was lucky enough to get through to the next round. And the next round for me was the 2018 Women's World Championship. The picture on the far left is the very first crew that went out on the diamond for that championship. All 4 of those people, on the far left, we have Mariana from the Netherlands, we have Chris Drum from the US, me, and then Kira Cox from Australia. All 4 of us ended up in Tokyo together. It's really special that we also got the chance to work together at multiple tournaments together as we were all preparing to go. I had to put this picture in here because Japan had, like, in 2018 when we were together in Chiba, they had record-breaking heat. And, you know, like, I normally don't sweat like this, but this was my jersey after getting off of a plate game at like 8 o'clock at night. It was like 48 degrees Celsius. It was ridiculous. And then the picture on the right, has been, like, it's just been everywhere. I can't, it's just unbelievable. This was one of the last days of the round robin. New Zealand is playing Australia, another awesome game. I was at second base here. Anyway, it was just an amazing experience. And then 2019 comes around and I get the fortunate experience to go. I was selected to do 2 international tournaments that summer. I went to the Pan American Games in early June, I think it was. And Annie Michaud and I were the Canadians that were there. That was such a special tournament because when I was called to do that assignment, I was told that I was notified that all of the Latin American umpires that were there were going to be, most of them, like 90% of them, were going to be at their first international tournament. And so I was expected to be like helpful and, you know, mentoring, do very thorough pregame conversations, because a group of them were going from the Pan American Games to their first World Championship in the United States. So that was such a great, like, what an honor to be selected to do that. And then on the right was my very first plate game at the Olympic qualifier in Surrey, which was a few weeks after I got back from Peru. And the Olympic qualifiers were amazing. Anyway, I ended up, my second plate game at the Olympic qualifier was Cuba and Mexico. This was the only game that went into extra innings. It ended up being 8-7 in 8 full. And the winner ended up going to, was qualifying for the World Championship, and the loser was not. So it was just an awesome tournament. And then, of course, 2019 is over, and Jen and I get our letters that we're going to the Olympics. And I can assure you, there were lots of tears on that day when we got our letters. And then, you know, COVID hits, and we have to wait for a year. And like, I think I did 4 games in 18 months before I ended up in Tokyo to do the Olympics. But you know, getting out of the airport, seeing the rings, getting the chance to go to the diamond, and like, honestly, you can be probably the most cold-hearted, or you know, when you see the rings live, it is a very emotional experience. And actually, ever since I went to my first international tournament in 2013. I have never been able to listen to the Canadian national anthem the same way. Anyone that's on the call that's had the chance to represent our fine country somewhere may feel the same way. I've talked about this with other people. It's just such what a privilege and what an awesome opportunity it is to hear your name in the same sentence as your country. It can't even describe. This is what the facility looked like. And this was my plate game that I had. This was Mexico, Japan. This was also, I think, the only extra inning game of the Olympic Games. This was a 3-2 ball game in 8 full innings. What a terrific game. This was also the game where I didn't realize it at the time, but I sustained a concussion. There's a TikTok video out there. I tried to insert it into the PowerPoint, but it didn't work. But yeah, in the top of the 7th inning, Yukiko Ueno is the pitcher for Japan. They're in red, and she throws a high inside fastball, and the girl from Mexico just gets her bat on it, and the ball picks up speed and clocks me in the mask, knocks me over. I didn't have any of the, like, I wasn't dizzy, I wasn't nauseous, so I finished the game, but I had a huge goose egg on my forehead, and I had like this ripper headache for the rest of the week. I'm actually so glad that they didn't put me from the tournament. Not really super concussion protocols over there, but I did have a CAT scan, but CAT scans don't show concussions. But and then these are the mementos that we got as a crew. Bob Stanton suggested that we get one thing in common for all the rings that would bind us together. And so the thing that we decided to get in common of all of the 13 rings was the stone. And the stone in the ring is called Blue Spiral Fire. And it was the closest match we could find for the uniforms that we wear, the light blue that we wear. We wear a similar color in Softball Canada. And it's, these 12 people are near and dear to my heart, and you know, will be friends of mine forever. I just love that picture. Anyway, just some, you know, I always, I think, again, some things that have helped me is I never forgot where I came from. I've always treated every game as if it was important. Doesn't matter what level, because you never know who's watching. Like, you can't afford to have, you know, the head coach of Team USA watching you do a U18 gold game and going, wow, Frankie, you suck tonight. Like, you know, you have to have some consistency from game to game. So I always treated every game like it was important for the players. I also think it's really important to give back, you know, like I rarely, if somebody asks me to do a presentation or to come and do a clinic, or like, I'm rarely going to say no. I love working with our next generation of umpires. I've worked more U11, U13, U15 games than I ever have in my entire career, because now I think it's time for me to give back to those officials that are trying to learn. And I also think those grassroots games are amazing to do, because the players themselves, I think, benefit from having really awesome officials do their games, you know, people that care and people that work hard. And so these 4 things have really been helpful to me as well. And someone once said to me, you know, Frankie, you can achieve anything with the right amount of enthusiasm. He said this to me. This was a boss of mine when I was being offered a promotion, and I had turned it down because I didn't think I was ready. I didn't think I had the right skills they were looking for. And he said, you can achieve anything with the right amount of enthusiasm. So I never forgot that. Anyone that knows me will know that I do sort of attack things with an enthusiastic spirit. And it's been really helpful. I mean, I've had players say to me, I remember when I first started doing ISC men's ball and men's elite ball, one of the players at the time, some of you may know Mike Piechnik, they called him Peaches at the time. He was from Vancouver. I went and watched one of the men's Canadian championships when it was in Saskatoon, and he was there, and he saw me in the stands. He goes, "Hey, Frankie, how come you're not working this?" And I killed myself laughing because I had just literally earned my level 4 like a month before that. And I was like, "Oh, I'm a long way away from this." And he said, "You know what the guys, we talk." He said, we just, what we really like about having you on the diamond is you work so hard. And even when we may not agree, we turn to argue, and it's like, damn, look at the position she's in. Like, she's right there. How do you argue? So I just want to finish by saying, if you don't think that the players and the coaches recognize hard work and people who enjoy what they're doing, you're sorely mistaken, because they really do. And that ties back to the importance of relationships, because if you look like you're working hard and you look like you're enjoying yourself, the players and the coaches feed off that, and they can see it. And I think those have been pillars to my success in everything that I have done, but especially umpiring, because the world it's a small community. And even internationally, like when I did that Mexico-Japan game in the Olympics, the catcher for Team Mexico reminded me that I did their very first plate game when they were competing internationally in 2013 at the USA Softball Cup. That was her very first game as an international player, and that was my very first game as an international umpire. Anyway, so it's a small community, so it's, building those relationships is really important. And again, not friends. You're not friends with them. You're just building rapport. You're building trust. You're building a perception of approachability and openness. And I think those are really important. And I have my contact information here. Sometimes people think of things after we've spent time together. And if you're not comfortable to ask a question here, I'd be happy to chat or answer any questions that people have. But that is, in a nutshell, that's my story of why I think I've been successful, and the steps that I took to get to that point. And it's been it's been a hell of a ride, I'll say that. So thank you for listening.
Okay, so we do have a little bit of time. If there's any questions somebody wants to ask, I see a few hands waving. So I saw Wendy's hand first, and then Daryl, and then Megan. If I missed somebody, I can't get everybody on the screen. So Wendy, if you want to ask your question.
I didn't have a question. It was just clapping. Sorry,
Frankie.
Oh,
okay. You're getting a round of applause.
No, I didn't sometimes. Yeah, no, that's totally cool. I have a really interesting. So Tony, you're most welcome. I haven't actually had a chance to tell this story very often because we've been in COVID for so long. So you're most welcome. On the matter of coaches and players are the most likely candidates for umpire, I'm wondering how you feel umpires can help address abuse in sportsmanship. What can we do to help change the culture? Usually the better the level, the less the abuse, but you lose a lot of good people at the lower levels because of some of the classless behavior. Tony, I agree 1,000%. One of the hats that I'm currently wearing is I'm the chair of the National Committee of Recruitment and Retention for Softball Canada. And one of the recommendations that we made last year was to address the abuse of umpires that's happening across the country. Oh, excuse me. So one of the things that we absolutely need to do, Softball Canada has free of charge home plate templates that stick on a backstop that talk about respect the game. They're free. They need to be on every backstop across the country. We have 2 provinces that already have these on the backstops, and they're still having issues. I think provincially, we need to work with our provincial softball partner to have a discipline process that has teeth, like big teeth. If we have coaches that are being thrown out of games, we need to have our partners supporting a suspension, a multiple game suspension, and then if they've had a second ejection, maybe a 10-game suspension. And if they have a third ejection, they're not allowed to coach for the rest of that season. I was really surprised that there are some jurisdictions in our country that don't have this in place. And some of the things that are happening at provincial tournaments are absolutely unacceptable. So I think, Tony, to answer your question, it's a multi-layered solution. We have to have local organizations supporting their local umpires to have massive consequences for bad coach behavior. And then we have to have provinces supporting that. Does that make sense?
Frankie, I have a question about those home plate backstop rules or whatever you just, I was writing it down and what you said already went out one ear. Would it be helpful if maybe the zone umpire in chiefs maybe give the umpires at the beginning of the season maybe a handful of these and then talk to whoever the organization is and just say, here, you know, put these on your whatever we end up umpiring, so that sort of we hit all the masses as opposed to leaving it up to one person? Because I can guarantee you, even the local like clubs probably aren't even aware that these things exist.
Actually, I'm going to jump in here.
Sure.
They are aware. They've all been sent multiple. They ordered a whole bunch from Softball Ontario in the fall. They will be displayed throughout the province on most backstops as soon as the weather permits. Softball Ontario, through Softball Canada, I assume, had bought and paid for all these signs. So they have been distributed to the associations, and I think we will see them up this coming season.
Wow. I don't know what to say about like if you've got the city that's refusing to allow them.
Yeah, I don't.
That's really unfortunate.
We have none of our parks have refused them, so I'm not aware of any that have. But Softball Ontario has offered them to anybody, any ballpark that wants them. They did it through their associations, so there will be a lot of signs very visible this coming season.
Can we get the backs of our shirts embroidered?
I was thinking the same thing, maybe attach it to the back of the helmets. If you can read this, then you can understand these rules apply.
Yeah, but you're so right, Lynn. Almost every recommendation that the National Committee for Recruitment and Retention comes up with, at some visceral level, it does boil down to the local UICs. Like there's only so much that the national body and the provincial body can do. The local UICs have a huge role in executing on so many of the different components to support their people. So it's a matter of like getting the information down so that they can put those recommendations into place.
Frankie, it's Ron Boucher. We also have to be in a position to help ourselves to a certain extent. I believe last year we put in place a reporting mechanism for umpires to report ejections from games that they've done. And to my knowledge, not a single email came through that reporting system for the entire season in the province. So to a certain extent, I'm 100% on board with what you're saying. It's got to be addressed in a much more group, from a group aspect, being the province, the associations, the local associations, and us ourselves as umpires. And we have to stick to it and back it.
Yeah, so thanks very much. I mean, I guess that I would assume that maybe you know what I'm just going to say in a nutshell, you can never over communicate, right? So yep. I think it would be apparent that if you didn't have one submission, there was a whole whack of people that didn't even know there was a reporting
Oh,
system in place.
I guarantee a lot of people didn't know about it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying we have to do a better job ourselves as umpires to help ourselves make this better.
Yeah.
Can
Like
I
that,
make a suggestion? Maybe during the, like when the kids actually take their junior, their intermediate, their level 1, it's already embedded. Like before you take down this number, before you leave, like take a picture, a screenshot. Here's where you can send a complaint, and somebody at the top or someone who will get back to you, you know, so there's some sort of log, because I'm still new to the game and I don't, the only thing I complained to Vito. Vito takes care of a lot of stuff, and so does Howard. So but it would have been nice maybe like in that, because I was writing down everything when I did my level 1. It might be just so, you know, if one kid heard it and the other kid didn't, you know, wasn't paying attention because they were on the phones during a presentation, it might be one of the places you could start locally. So at least the new ones have at least heard it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Are you in Vito's area?
Yeah, I'm with Kelsey. I'm Kelsey's mom.
Oh, well, I live in Aurora, so we're in the same zone. So
Yeah.
nice to meet you. So I just would, because I also play basketball or umpire referee basketball. When they came up with a reporting system, Ron, every single referee in the province received an email about, here's the new system, here's where it is, and here's what you use it for. So that might be, I know that.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. And then
And
also
we can also mention it at Blue Symposium next month or whenever we're doing it.
Couple weeks.
Then also, who's in charge of then reviewing those submissions and going through that? Like, do we have the supports there to do that?
It's the fast pitch committee, umpires committee that monitors the email account, and specifically myself. And I would be tabulating a spreadsheet to track coaches, and I would be reporting it to the associations, PW, OASA, with the intent that there would be some action taken if somebody's showing up on a ejection complaint, or they are being ejected more than once.
The other thing is, I know we don't want to, call out the fact that but we need to call out the fact that this is a problem. And so some provinces and some sports, this is the very first thing, unfortunately, that you see on the website. Incident report, like it's like big. You've got a couple of people saying that they maybe had troubles finding it on the website.
The website's been changed and updated a little bit. Just go to Softball Ontario Umpires Toolbox and you'll find the forms.
The bigger problem that I can see, Frankie, for us on the diamond is not even necessarily the mid-season tournaments, more the local stuff where you may not even know the coach's name that you just ejected. So you wouldn't even know who to report. At a provincial, absolutely, you're going to have all of that information. Even at the sanctioned tournaments that PW or OA run, you're going to have that information.
Right. So I guess, like, interestingly enough, I mean, if we're teaching our plate umpires to do a plate conference before every game, they should be getting 100%. The first names, right? So I kind of like, if a plate umpire is not doing a plate conference and they don't have the first name of the coach, even a first name, right? Then that's kind of like a basic thing that we need to go back to, is instilling that, like, we need to do a plate conference, and that's part of the reason we're doing it.
100%.
Yeah. And I just, also want to just put a little plug in, I think to Tony's point earlier, I do not do a game, doesn't matter what level, where I don't talk to somebody in the game about, you should really think about umpiring. And it's sometimes people that, like, I never take off the recruitment hat. I'm always recruiting. And I just think there's some people that are playing that I just think they would have a natural affinity for it. And I just, I bet you, especially with women are not going to necessarily think about taking up this avocation unless somebody asks them. But once they're asked, I do think that they'll give it a thought. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I had to be asked 3 times, but I did finally come around. That's just so top of mind for me, especially because our numbers in Ontario could really use a boost.
I think that can be said for every province in the country, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. But Ron, like the
Yep.
just, you know, the growth that since I've been chairing the recruitment and retention committee, the growth that we've seen around the country is Ontario has a longer way to go.
Really? Now that's interesting information. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah. But I mean, like there's, you know, because the mandate of the committee is to meet, to get back to 2019 numbers. So 5 provinces and territories have already met that. So we have to come up with new goals for them. Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia are close. And then the 4 that need some, Alberta, BC, Ontario, and Manitoba. And Ontario is at the top of, but I mean, we're the biggest province, right? So
Yeah, we probably had the biggest drop.
absolutely.
We did.
But officials are dropping everywhere, guys. It's
Well, 100%.
I don't know if you saw this, just to bring a point up. So the other week I was watching, you ever guys ever watch Around the Horn?
Mhm.
So Bob Ryan was on and he had his little 30-second thing at the end, and he mentioned that the big issue across the states is retention of any sporting official, right? So he was just doing a thing about the parents are the worst offenders of it, and that the retention of young officials is like really bad, so that they're having trouble, and that's in any sport, right? So it's not just here, it's in the States, it's everywhere, and it's every sport. So you know, it's just something that unfortunately everybody has to deal with. But yeah, there's, I mean, we try and deal with it at the Diamond if we can when something gets out of hand, and we try and do our best. But that's the hardest part, is that we don't want the parents, coaches, whatever, getting on the younger officials, because that's where we can't retain them, right? When they get on their case, they don't want to come back after they've been blasted or something. So, but it's not just up here, and a lot of people are quite aware of it. So.
And
Yeah, no,
I think
thanks, Peter.
I think a big part of keeping like the young ones around too is showing the potential. That so many of them just see, oh, all I'm going to do is just house league. It's just house league. So getting them out to tournaments and getting them to meet all the other opportunities that are available in the umpiring world is a big motivator as well. So giving them the opportunities and the challenges too.
I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, I think on the fast pitch side, not necessarily on the slow pitch side, but on the fast pitch side for sure, we've got people that are all over the province that are kind of waiting to advance. And when we, but you know, Jamie, I'm not saying anything you haven't heard, but when we're forcing them to take to take a in-person clinic, and they live like 5 hours from a closest in-person, like, I think the pandemic taught us we can teach some online stuff, right? So we gotta help people progress, and sometimes an online clinic can help. I think on the fast pitch side for sure.
So
Steve Camus here. Hey, Jamie, just give me a second.
I will.
First of all, Frankie, congratulations on all your successes. Very well spoken, great presentation. I love listening to fast pitch umpires, being a slow pitch umpire myself, because I find I learn so much more listening to the other side of the game, because we're locked into listening to our friends, to our peers, you know, that are within our game. And when we open our ears to the other side, just last year when I was umpiring a Canadian championship, one of my UICs was a fast pitch umpire. Traditionally, I learned so much more from him. So I love these presentations where a fast pitch person is speaking and slow pitch people are on, and vice versa. So really open your ears to the other game. You can learn a lot. But my opinion on the drop in the umpires, COVID took a hit. We took a hit with COVID, but the biggest hit is society. When we were all younger and when we were kids, we were playing outdoor sports. We didn't have all the options that all the kids have today. The kids are not playing outdoor sports like they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So that is where our biggest struggle is. Society has changed so much that for us to recruit officials, the lack of interest has dropped dramatically from when we were younger. So that's the biggest component to why we've dropped so much in our officials. COVID did hit us hard, but it's society that we're struggling with. There is abuse, all that stuff. I just don't want to repeat all the points that everybody makes because they are all good points. But one thing that a lot of people don't think of is the change in society has affected us big time.
Valid point, Steve. So I think with that, we're going to wrap this up tonight. I really want to thank Frankie for making herself available and for a great presentation. And I want to thank everybody that took the time out of their evening to join us tonight. So thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you for asking, and thank you for joining.
Thanks, Frankie.
Thanks, Frankie.
Thank you.
Good
Take
night,
care.
everybody.
Night.
Night.
Night.